Welcome to Market Buzz. I'm Greg Schnell, the Canadian technician and host of the Market Buzz. Each show, we do a deep dive into different industries using weekly charts to see what is happening on a long timeline. Please follow me on Twitter at Schnell Investor, and you can also find my blogs on gregschnell.com as well as StockCharts.com. So we've got a different show lined up today. I want to cover off a couple of things. And so the big thing I've got here is the market should be bullish. All of my breadth indicators and everything are leaning bullish. The problem is when I look around, I've got a few select stock groups that are starting to roll over that have been working, like energy. And I'm actually finding a lot of technology stocks that had been running starting to stall. So I'm trying to figure all this out. So let me go through a couple of things. And what I wanted to do was cover off a few different things. So I'm struggling to find nice setups Tuesday night here. And yes, I checked all the new highs and I went through that kind of stuff and I looked for groups turning up. The problem is the stuff that is supposed to be turning up kind of turned up and then stalled. And the stuff that's just starting to turn up now, I'm a little bit interested in, but not quite. It's kind of like a month later, all of a sudden the stuff wants to start getting out of bed, and that's just a little bit late. So that one bothers me a bit. Anyway, so I'm going to go through a chart list of annotated charts and can it help? And the whole idea here is to just, when I annotate a chart, I try to put the date on it. And it doesn't always happen, but a lot of the times I'll get that date on there. And so the idea being, if we go look in on Bitcoin, what was I thinking as it ran up and topped and pulled back and broke down and broke out and all that kind of stuff? We should be able to see that when we go through those charts. And I'll show it again for Tesla and for Twilio. And the point of the exercise is hopefully you can... one of the things that people sometimes are afraid to do is to keep saving charts over and over. And I think it's really important to change. As your view changes, your chart should change, or as the chart changes, your view should change. And so how do we do that? How do we make sure that? So this is going to help people who don't understand how technical analysis can give us some signals. But on the other hand, it'll show you where I was wrong on Bitcoin, where I was right, and the same on Tesla and on Twilio. So maybe you'll enjoy my success or my failure, one of the two. Okay, here is the S&P 500 currently. In mid-October, it was down here around 4,300. It shot up to 4,600. Really nice push. I was on The Pitch, the show on StockCharts called The Pitch with Jeff Hughes back on July 27th. So that is 3 months ago. And guess what Jeff said? His target for the S&P 500 was 46. So I'm going to say that his target was hit today. And then is this over? And so I don't think it's over. But the one thing I would say is that my rate of change lines are starting to decline. This is the 11 period, 22 and 44 on a 60-minute chart. And again, you can see there's an uptrend here. This isn't bad yet. So when we look at the daily chart, what we see here is this is run quite steeply and not really the same as any of this in here, a much steeper angle. It was like this back in April. And then when it kind of got towards the end of the month, it just went sideways. We've only had 3 blue days. So back here, we had a whole bunch more than that, but we didn't make a lot of headway either. So I'm wondering why my charts are starting to stall and I can't quite put my thumb on it. A lot of my breadth indicators are still okay and everything looks pretty good. The one thing I will say is that my momentum indicator on the weekly chart is rolling over on the PPO, and that's got me a little more concerned. So as I mentioned on the daily chart here, we broke out to a new high. We're having trouble holding it a little bit, but the reason that this new high is more significant is because on the NASDAQ 100, we're breaking out to this new high. This looks good, right? And our PPO trend line is holding up. I've got some different values on my 60-minute chart. But anyway, my PPO trend line is holding up. But the reason that the S&P is significant is because it was trying to break out today just above a prior high. And the NASDAQ got to the prior high today, and what we're watching for now is, does it have the horsepower to get through? So there was a lot of push. Obviously, Tesla added a little bit of punch power to it. We're going to look at that Tesla chart in a little bit because that's one of the charts that I have more than one annotation for, and hopefully it'll give us an idea. The one thing I like to look at on these charts, and I don't know how many thousands of times I've said this, but let me just reiterate it. So one thing I like to watch for is when you have a PPO trend line, you want to be aware of that trend line, especially if it's trending down. And then as the price gets up here, now it can go all the way through on the Toronto Stock Exchange, it has gone through, but it can also get up here and just roll over and stall. And I'll show you some of the charts that I've gotten. It's amazing. They literally bounced 4 or 5 times on Bitcoin and just stalled at that trend line. So we want to be aware of the momentum, or I want to be aware of the momentum. Maybe some people don't think it's important. But I've also got a little uptrend here. I'm testing the prior high. So if we were to start rolling over, and we can see on this histogram down here that we're no longer accelerating up. We've gone flat for the last 4 days. No big deal. But essentially what it tells us is we're losing a bit of momentum that we had accelerating off the lows. So I want to be aware of that change. I'm just going to X out of here. Let me just do one more thing here. Sorry. Just going to get a larger cursor. There we go. Okay, so watching this this daily chart, that's important. But we also see on the weekly chart for the NASDAQ, we're making lower highs in momentum and have been for almost a year. Well, in this case, over a year. And what we want to make sure of is that we can continue to rally, right? That's the goal. Everybody's bullish. Everybody wants to be bullish. Nobody wants to be bearish. But I think one of the interesting things here is on a weekly chart, the NASDAQ really isn't outperforming the S&P 500 anymore. And the best part of the rally was when that was happening. Had some chop in here from the February to July time frame, and then we broke out to I'll call it a good run into July, and then as we got into the August time frame, we went sideways. Then we kind of started hiccuping in here. We haven't really gone anywhere since whatever July 1st, but it looks a little better on the daily chart. Here's July 1st. We were there for a few days, and now we've rallied a little bit off that. I guess it's 1,000 points or 7%. But what we want to be in tune with is the NASDAQ going to continue its leadership? And so here, when we look across, we're roughly at, call it 4 or 5 month time frame where the NASDAQ's performed in line with the S&P 500. What I don't like is that this uptrend has been broken, and we haven't really restarted it yet. So that's kind of more my concern. I want to see the NASDAQ start to outperform. Okay, so that's an example of one of the reasons that I'm a little bit cautious here. And again, all my breadth indicators are still bullish, but when you're testing a prior high, it's always a good place to check our work. Okay, so now I want to go through Bitcoin, and just to show you what we're going to do here, I have all of these different Bitcoin charts that I've worked on over, since April. That's the first one, and then leads us up to the end of October. And what you can see is all the different types of chart drawings I did: weekly, daily, hourly, 10-minute, all kinds of stuff in here. But it gives you an idea of just different ways to analyze the chart. And maybe it'll help new technicians just think about how they're drawing their trend lines or whatever, and maybe you'll even find some errors in my work. But the idea isn't to be critical, it's to just kind of talk about what we see. So again, Bitcoin topped in mid-April, and the big thing that we had going here was this big run up, and it was quite steep. And so when we got to this mid-April time frame, nobody thought Bitcoin could ever go down, obviously. Then we had a big sharp pull down, which broke the uptrend. We rallied a little bit after that uptrend, and then we fell away. Not to harp on this, but let me just go get the S&P 500. And what we see on the daily chart is we had a big uptrend, we've broken it, and now we've had a follow-up rally. So could we just do like Bitcoin did, have our follow-up rally and then fall away? Let's find out. Okay, so this is again just a clean chart, no annotations on it, but look at how Bitcoin made a high in momentum, a lower high, 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 and just kept making this series of lower highs. And we finally make a higher high in here. And whether we pick, I'll call it the late June low or the July low for our PPO momentum, what becomes increasingly obvious is that this long downtrend in momentum declining breaks. So it breaks roughly in here, and yes, we worked our way back low, came back to test the lows, and then fired out of the hole. And when we did that, our momentum changed. We ran up, we rolled over. And then we ran up again and rolled over. So we want to be careful here because we do have a sell signal on our momentum indicator. That doesn't mean Bitcoin going all the way down to zero. It just means that the current level of momentum has ebbed a little bit, or has decided to roll over. But I like to look at things like the relative strength against the S&P 500, and you can see that that little trend line is broken. And on the next few charts, this was just a clean chart that I used as a background, and then I started to draw on it. So I'm just going to open up this chart a little bit here. And what you'll see on this chart was I was drawing a head and shoulders structure. I had this dotted line in here, and I was noting that the histogram was starting to improve here for the first time. See how all these were small? The histogram actually started to rally, came back down, a little rally again, and just kind of indecision, and then all of a sudden, boom, it took off to the races. So that was kind of the drawing I was working on, and this was for an article I wrote on the StockCharts Canadian Technician page. So on this page here, what we see here is when relative strength is declining, Bitcoin was declining versus the S&P. So when its price was moving down faster than the S&P, or moving less fast than the S&P, then investors were staying away. And then once it started to improve, investors got back on the bandwagon. So we see this big PPO momentum, and then we can draw a trend line down here across these peaks. And when that broke, that wasn't a bad place. When this one broke, that wasn't a bad place. And now we have another one, and we could have been tempted to draw in here. Anyway, if you did decide you wanted out, well, then it turned around. It did what we call, or what I call, a kiss and go, where it tries to cross trend line, doesn't, or the signal line, and fires off another run to the upside. So now we've got a double top in relative strength, a double top in price, and we're waiting to see which way Bitcoin wants to go. Okay, so this is back. This is from the article I actually wrote. And again, well, let's do it this way because it doesn't quite give me enough the other way. What I wrote on this article was my uptrend is breaking. I've got a left shoulder and a top. I've got the end of the relative strength uptrend, whether you use the short one, this 3-month, or a big 7-month long one. When it got to this point, that was pretty big change in relative strength for me. And when you look at the PPO, the momentum was getting lower, but was still a positive level. And after that, it started to break below zero, and that was a good clue that things were getting a little weaker. Conversely, when Bitcoin got back above zero, and it all looks easy in hindsight, right? This was barely above zero and then rolled over really hard. So when you're watching momentum, it's important to just kind of have context around it. What are we trying to solve here? I would say at this point now, there's another big trend line that we could draw on here that we probably want to watch for now that this bubble is rolled over on the right. Okay, so here we are. This is the first one, April 4th, or April 13th. And so you see right into April here, we broke out and we pulled back. And so I'm drawing that on the chart. This big uptrend is coming into play right at the same end as we try to break out and fail. Again, we're on our fourth lower high on momentum. Our relative strength uptrend is starting to break in here. And our horizontal level is having trouble outperforming even over the last, let's say, 2 months. It was basically performing in line with the S&P 500. So when we move on to April 14th, this just happens to be the day that Coinbase goes public. And so big crypto thing going public. Anyway, all of a sudden, Coinbase shoots to the moon and falls to the floor. And it just happens to be that that's actually the sell signal on Bitcoin that something like that has happened. Now, fast forward over here, and we've just had the first Bitcoin ETF legalized in the US. The euphoria goes crazy. $1.5 billion moves in. And the question is, are we just setting up another top like we did back here? And it just so happens to be at the same level. Anyway, those are all good questions, but it was quite interesting that this trend line was drawn, horizontal test of support and resistance. We broke out, failed to hold it, also broke the uptrend. Your momentum is just barely holding above zero and starts to fall below zero right at the time when everybody's all bullish. And again, 65,000 back to whatever, 29,000 or 30,000. That was a relatively steep drop. What you can see here is this is your momentum low, but it's not your price low. So here's your momentum indicator here. So the momentum on your original thrust falls, and on your second push down, the momentum is less. And that's always important to realize that as we work our way through building a low, that the momentum starts to improve before the low actually turns in a lot of cases. Very often you'll see that. Okay, so looking onward here. So here's the big Bitcoin trend line. And again, this is April 16th, so just a few days later. And then here's April 23rd. So I'm looking at it. Obviously, I'm quite interested to see if Bitcoin's going to turn and reverse on me after I've written that article or not. And now here we are, Bitcoin weekly chart. This uptrend is broken. This uptrend is broken before we even get to the daily uptrend over here. Now this was really steep, but what we see is the PPO uptrend that I like to watch for actually broke, let's say mid-May, and all of a sudden that's when the volume really pounded down. Not only did that break our momentum uptrend on the weekly chart, but it also marked our first momentum low. And actually very close to the final low price that we got to. So this almost became a measuring stick. We landed on it, rallied, landed on it, rallied, landed on it, and bounced out of there. Okay, as we work our way through on May the 12th, I was just drawing in this line and that we failed at this little touch here and down we went really hard. One of the things I always like to watch for is when momentum rolls over at zero or just below, it could actually accelerate lower quite quickly. And especially as something as vivid as Bitcoin was at the time, that proved to be a prescient place to be careful. So now we have the horizontal support and resistance going back to the January lows. We've landed, it's May 18th, and we're just kind of watching price go sideways in here. And as it's starting to break down, what we want to watch for is how the bottoming process happens. So this is a 5-minute chart. It won't let me go back 6 months on a 5-minute chart, so I have to skip that. But here we are on a daily, and we're just marking a point in time here. I didn't write any more detail about it, but I've clearly drawn it, and guess what? It just happens to be at the end of the long uptrend. We make one more high. So we break this one here, would come in, I don't know, somewhere in here. Anyway, we break it, we bounce out of that low, and we come back up. We actually do make a higher high in relative strength, so that would get everybody all bullish. We make a higher high in price, yet momentum makes a lower high, and down we go. We just kind of keep cascading as we've broken that uptrend line. So here's the relative strength picture. This is May the 20th, and going back and writing a couple of different articles about this. But you see the straight up price action. We've had a 430% move from November to April. Running up, we get to this peak, we break this trend line right when the relative strength breaks, we make another short rally, and then we fall away. All of these are good clues to help us find what went wrong with Bitcoin and how it topped out. So this is Bitcoin May 21st, and I'm still writing about it. Nothing really. This is a 5-minute chart. So again, we can't go back to that period in time. Here's the daily chart for Bitcoin back then. Let's just go see if I've got any data around that. Dan Gramza buying wicks. So there was a guy named Dan Gramza. There is a guy named Dan Gramza, and he is a trader. And one of the things he always talks about is when you have long tails or long tops, these are wicks on your candle, and when they hang below, somebody stepped in to buy these and push them back up. And at the top, you want to watch for long wicks sticking out the top and then failing and falling away. So as these buying wicks were coming in, even though price was falling, somebody was actually starting to buy this and pick it up as it was dropping. Okay, so 2-hour chart, that won't work for us either. So anyway, lots of intraday charts. As you can see, this is a 30-minute time frame. I don't know if I can go back that much on 30-minute. Let's just see if it's there. No, I get 2 months of data on 30 minutes. And then here we are on June the 9th, and we're starting to come up off the lows. So that makes it a little bit interesting. And then here's June the 9th, the 2nd, and I've got quite a complex drawing here. I'm just going to add a few more days to it and see if that'll bring it all into scale. So here we are. We've made this left shoulder top and a right shoulder. We have kind of a rolling top also, if you wanted to, but we very clearly have this head and shoulders top, and what it would do is it would measure a target all the way down to like 12,000 or something. But more importantly for me is that as we make this right shoulder, we're starting to improve in momentum. And so what I had suggested in here was that this oval circle would give us kind of an upside target to get us back to a height that we might first try to achieve. And sure enough, over here what happened was that's exactly kind of the range we rallied into. And then we pulled back. I would call this a pretty good support resistance layer. It was support in here, then resistance, and then it becomes support, and we bounce out of here. So just had done some head and shoulders targets and some looking for what bounce would be after the fact, and it ended up being not a bad guesstimate. Okay, so here's Bitcoin, nothing really going on, June 21st. Here's July the 20th. So we're right here, right on this low. And I'm looking at the chart and going, wow, Bitcoin's really got a hold here, really got a hold here. But what I'm noticing is that I'm actually putting in higher lows in momentum. And sure enough, this actually ended up being like just a wonderful buy point. And I didn't buy crypto. But wow, did it take off to the upside. And that was just a really huge move. I did a show with Jeff Hughes and Mark Newton called The Pitch back on July 27th. You can go to the StockCharts website and check that out. But what happened on that day was he said, Dave Keller asked us, would anybody buy Bitcoin here? And I'm like, well, it hasn't really finished basing, right? It hasn't really got out of the hole we're in. And so what we want to kind of watch for is, can it? And it's trying to build a base. Well, it chopped around, and I suggested it needed, more time to kind of make its final low. Well, I was clearly wrong. That was the final low, and off we went to the upside. So July 21st, this is another intraday chart. So here's a daily chart. Let's just, in mid-July, and the only thing I'm drawing is this support and resistance level. Sure enough, we rallied out of it, came back down to it, and bounced off it again. So that was good. And here, another intraday chart in September, 16 minutes. So let's just go back and see if we can get another month of data. And yeah, I'm just drawing that the trend lines are narrowing. This is at the end of September, not so much at the July one. So let's just pull that up. So here is the July low. We rally out of the hole. We're falling. We're making a bit of a pennant pattern. And sure enough, we break out of there and turn positive. So that was a nice place to look for our breakout to the upside again. And then October 1, we're watching, and Bitcoin is trying to shoot up here, trying to get going. But the big thing we note is all of a sudden our relative strength is starting to break out again. Nice time to get on board. On the 8th, my arrow here is just showing that we had rolled over, but I remember specifically in here talking about I expect Bitcoin to bounce off the trend line, and here's a bullish kiss and go. And sure enough, that was a really nice rally point from roughly 40,000 up to 65. And then this is currently the setup. And where are we now? We've got this little head and shoulder chart on roughly a 2-week time frame. And so the question here is, will Bitcoin bounce out of here and take off to the upside, or do we actually lose it here and we've put in another secondary top? Okay, so that's just how to kind of look through your annotations. I'm going to quickly work through Tesla. I've only got a few minutes left, but what I want to show you on Tesla, here we are back in February and we're watching for this breakout. It fails and we roll back down. And you can see on this weekly chart, the PPO momentum was drifting lower, but actually kiss and go the other way and fell even harder. So here's April the 16th, potential for the next high to be a final high. Sure enough, we ran up and 780 and came all the way back down to 546. So that was a nice call on that one. And then on April the 18th is all I was doing here. I don't know if I can go back far enough. What is this 60-minute chart? Let's see. So we push back, and basically Tesla and Bitcoin have moved pretty good together ever since Tesla said they weren't going to take Bitcoin anymore, which I think was in July here. It rallied ever since, but Bitcoin also rallied, and now both of them are kind of coming up here, and perhaps we've got a bit of an exhaustion surge on both of those charts. Same thing here, another 60-minute chart. Looking at April 28th, just go back and see if there's more data for us. Just that it was rolling over, and be careful here. And then looking on May 11th, May 11th, zone of indecision on momentum. So we're coming downhill here, and we're trying to figure out if this is actually going to turn higher. And sure enough, we did make a higher low, and that was a really nice place to start to get long. May 14th pretty much marks our low, actually. We had one day below that, and then off to the races we were there. Now we have a bit of an exhaustion push in volume, I think. And then, so this is just big picture on May the 18th. And then on May 26th, watching to see what Tesla's going to do. We get to this top here and we kind of fall back, but we've got big trend lines that this line is going to be resistance right at the end of May. And June 22nd, we're starting to write about it here. Right in here, we get our buy signal on Tesla bouncing off the zero, full stochastic starting to turn up, relative strength breaking, and out we go to the top side. And then June 23rd, same thing, no real new comment. July the 6th, so we're just continuing to watch this. Anyway, the point I want to make is that when you annotate these charts over time, you can go back and see what you're thinking. Here's a nice breakout, even if you got in on this July the 26th downtrend, off Tesla goes to the upside. That looks like a pretty nice entry. On September the 1st, Green Arrow published an article saying get long Tesla here. And then September 28th said here's another chance to get long Tesla. And then here's Tesla, Ford, and GM. So anyway, I don't have time to get into Twilio today, but hopefully that shows you the value of kind of continuing to annotate your charts and update them over time as you go, and it'll help show you what you were thinking at the time and would you have been able to make or take the trade. I think that's always important. Thank you for taking the time to join me on Market Buzz. Market Buzz airs Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. You can also see the recording on StockCharts TV YouTube page or StockCharts on demand. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good week trading. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.